The galaxy was at peace, a fragile kind of peace built on the mutual distrust of its inhabitants. The Galactic Union, an alliance of powerful alien civilizations, had maintained stability for centuries. Each race guarded its own interests while adhering to the Union's strict laws. But beneath the polished veneer of unity, whispers of rebellion, war, and destruction had begun to spread. At the heart of this uneasy calm was Earth, a planet dismissed by the Union as insignificant. Humans were seen as reckless, short-sighted, and unworthy of interstellar attention. Earth was left isolated after first contact, its technology deemed primitive, its people volatile. The Union didn't see humanity as a threat, it saw them as a liability. That perception changed when the Korthan swarm arrived. The Korthans were a nightmare of evolution, a race of biomechanical predators that consumed entire planets and assimilated their technologies. They had emerged from the void beyond the galactic rim, their fleet blotting out the stars as they devoured everything in their path. Even the Union's most advanced defenses had faltered before the Korthan onslaught. As world after world fell, desperate broadcasts begged for aid. The Union, paralyzed by bureaucracy and infighting, hesitated to respond. And then came the message, the one that changed everything. It was a single, garbled transmission sent from a dying human outpost on Mars. This is Outpost Redstone. Korthans have landed, weapon test successful. Coordinates attached. They can be stopped. For the first time, the Union took notice. The idea was absurd, primitive humans, resisting the Korthans? It had to be a fluke, a trick of luck or coincidence. But when the Korthans' movement slowed, diverting resources toward Earth's solar system, it became clear that humanity had done something no other race had managed, they had struck a blow against the swarm. The Union sent an envoy to Earth. Admiral Khazar-AK, a reptilian Theric with an unbroken record of victories, was tasked with investigating humanity's supposed breakthrough. His cruiser, Eternal Vigilance, arrived in orbit to find Earth in chaos. Cities were in ruins, the atmosphere scarred with the remnants of battles against Korthan drones. And yet, humanity still stood. Admiral Khazar-AK was greeted by Commander Sarah Harlan, a battle-hardened leader in her mid-40s with a sharp gaze that seemed to pierce through Khazar-AK's armor. She escorted the alien admiral to the underground command center beneath what was once New York City. "Welcome to humanity's last hope," Harlan said, gesturing to the ragged but determined crew of scientists, engineers, and soldiers around her. The command center was a mess of improvised technology. Alien weapon fragments were patched into human systems, glowing with unstable energy. Holograms displayed the Korthan fleet's movements, alongside crude simulations of Earth's remaining defenses. Khazar-AK's skepticism was evident. "Your species' resilience is noted. But your method seems suicidal at best. How did you repel the swarm?" Harlan didn't flinch. "Desperation breeds innovation, Admiral. We've been scavenging Korthan tech, reverse engineering it, and figuring out how to use their strength against them." She pulled up a schematic of a massive weapon labeled Project Aegis. "This is the prototype we tested on Mars. It's designed to disrupt the Korthans' neural network. It's far from perfect, but it worked well enough to buy us time." Khazar-AK studied the design, his expression unreadable. "Impressive. But this alone cannot turn the tide." "It doesn't have to," Harlan replied. "We just need to slow them down long enough to rally the galaxy." "You want to stop the Korthans? Humanity's your best bet." Her words were a gamble, a bold declaration that humanity's survival depended on convincing an indifferent galaxy to unite. Khazar-AK remained silent for a moment, then activated his communicator. "Prepare a report for the Union Council. Inform them that Earth has a weapon capable of resisting the Korthans." As the transmission ended, Harlan turned back to the holograms, her jaw set. "We're not just fighting for Earth anymore," she muttered. "This is about all of us." Unbeknownst to both Harlan and Khazar-AK, a Korthan spy drone had infiltrated the command center. It transmitted its findings back to the swarm, which immediately began adapting to humanity's newfound weapon. The battle for the galaxy was about to escalate. Here's part 2, the Alliance of Asterisk, the Last Hope, Humans vs. the Galaxy, 695 words. Part 2, the Alliance. The Union Council convened in a towering crystalline structure on Altair Prime, a planet of light and perpetual energy. The chamber was filled with representatives of countless species, their forms ranging from insectoid to gaseous, each speaking in their own dialect through shimmering translation fields. At the center of the chamber stood Admiral Khazar AK, towering over most of the other delegates, his scales catching the iridescent glow of the council floor. His report on humanity's efforts against the Korthans had drawn both awe and skepticism. The humans have accomplished what no other species has managed, Khazar AK declared. They have not only survived the Korthans but developed a weapon capable of disrupting their neural networks. I recommend immediate support to Earth's defenses. His words were met with a cacophony of responses. They are reckless, shouted a spherical delegate from the Maitrin hive. Their actions will only provoke the swarm further. They are resourceful, countered a feathered Lirali diplomat, her voice melodic yet firm. If they've found a weakness in the swarm, we must exploit it. The debate raged for hours. The Union Council had long been divided, its members bound more by necessity than trust. Even in the face of the Korthan threat, old rivalries simmered beneath the surface. It was a hologram of Commander Sarah Harlan that finally silenced the chamber. She stood tall, her human features sharp and defiant. "I didn't come here to beg," she began, her voice amplified across the vast hall. "Earth has been fighting this war alone, with nothing but scraps and determination. If the Union wants to sit back and watch as the Korthans wipe us out, fine. But know this, they won't stop with us. Humanity will be the first to fall, but we won't be the last." Her words struck a chord, but her next move solidified her position. She activated a display of the Project Aegis schematics, overlaying footage of the weapon in action during the Mars test. The hologram showed Korthan drones collapsing mid-air, their mechanical limbs seizing before they crashed into the red dust. "This is what we can do with next to nothing," Harlan continued. "Imagine what we could achieve if the galaxy stood with us." For a moment, there was silence. Then, a ripple of agreement began to spread. The Lirali delegate stood first, her feathers shimmering in a display of solidarity. "My people will assist," she declared. "We will send engineers and resources to improve this weapon." One by one, other species followed. The Maitrin hive reluctantly agreed, offering their expertise in neural interfaces. The massive Alterans, whose crystalline bodies could withstand immense energy, pledged to deploy their ships as reinforcements. But not everyone joined the alliance. A faction led by the Cinder conglomerate, a powerful merchant species, declared neutrality. Their leader, a gelatinous being encased in an exosuit, sneered as it spoke. "Humanity's recklessness will bring ruin to us all. We will not waste resources on a doomed effort." Despite the dissent, the seeds of an alliance were planted. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's most powerful races began to work together. Back on Earth, the underground command center buzzed with new activity. Alien engineers and scientists arrived in droves, their advanced technology integrating with humanity's makeshift systems. The air was filled with the hum of collaboration as languages and cultures mixed in a desperate effort to refine Project Aegis. Commander Harlan found herself in constant meetings, coordinating efforts and navigating the cultural clashes between humans and their alien allies. But beneath the surface of progress, a darker reality loomed. A report from a human scout ship, the Vigilant Horizon, had confirmed the worst: the Korthans were adapting. The swarm's latest movements suggested they were preparing a new strategy, one designed to counter the effects of Project Aegis. "We're running out of time," Harlan said during a briefing with Khazar AK and the Lirali engineer, Vasara. "We need to complete the next phase of the weapon before the swarm strikes again." Vasara tilted her feathered head. "The neural disruptor can be scaled, but at great risk. If we overcharge it, it could destroy their network, or tear a hole in our own." Harlan met her gaze, her voice steady. then we find a way to make it work. Failure isn't an option. Unbeknownst to the Alliance, a shadowy figure moved among them, a Cinder agent working in secret. The Cinder conglomerate, unwilling to risk open involvement, had sent the operative to sabotage the effort from within. As the galaxy's newfound alliance worked tirelessly to perfect their weapon, the Korthans prepared their next strike, and betrayal loomed just beneath the surface. The battle for survival had begun in earnest. Let me know if you'd like to adjust or continue with. The alliance between the galaxy's species was fragile at best. While their shared goal of defeating the Korthans kept them united, old tensions simmered beneath the surface. Mutual suspicion, historical grudges, and political maneuvering had quickly become part of the equation. No one trusted anyone entirely, not even humanity, the newcomers to the galactic stage. In the depths of Earth's underground command center, Commander Sarah Harlan reviewed the progress of Project Aegis. The weapon was nearly ready, the neural disruptor powered up, and the alliances had contributed enough resources to push the project into its final phase. But with each passing day, the pressure mounted. The Korthans were not standing still, they were evolving. New Korthan ships, larger and more dangerous, had begun to encroach upon the outer systems of the galaxy, testing the boundaries of the Alliance's resolve. Harlan sat at her console, examining the data when her comms officer, Lieutenant Park, interrupted. "Commander, we've just intercepted a coded transmission," Park said, his voice tense. "It's not from the Korthans. It's from the Cinder conglomerate." Harlan's brow furrowed. "What are they saying?" Park hesitated, then replayed the message. The Cinder operative's voice was low and hurried. This is Agent Zelenar. The Cinder conglomerate does not support the humans' efforts. We will sabotage the weapon. Stand by for my next instructions. The galaxy cannot afford a victory for humanity. The word struck like a blow. A betrayal so insidious, so carefully hidden, that it had almost gone unnoticed. Harlan slammed her fist on the console. They were never on our side. She turned to Park. "Send this to Admiral Kazarek. Immediately." Within the hour, a fleet-wide alert was sent out, and the entire alliance was on high alert. The Cinder conglomerate had placed an agent in the heart of their operations, right under their noses. Worse yet, the sabotage had already begun. In the midst of the chaos, a quiet figure made their way through the shadows of the command center. Zelenar, the Cinder agent, had begun his work. He had been using his position to subtly manipulate the weapon's construction, introducing faulty components into the critical systems. Each error was small but deliberate, enough to undermine the weapon's ability to function under the immense strain it would face. The Korthans were adapting rapidly, and if the Alliance's weapon failed, humanity, and everyone else, would be doomed. Zelenar entered a small, dimly lit lab where human and alien engineers were working together on the final adjustments to Project Aegis. He blended in with the crowd, his gelatinous form concealed within a camouflage suit, moving silently as he injected a corrosive agent into the weapon's power core. His actions were precise. Each strike against the project took just enough time to ensure that no one would suspect him until it was too late. Back in the command center's main operations hub, Harlan and Kazarek convened with the Lirali engineer, Visara. They were already formulating a new plan to counter the Korthans' rapid adaptation. The news of the Cinder's betrayal was like a spark in dry tinder, and a wave of frustration and distrust spread through the ranks. "We cannot afford to lose focus," Harlan said firmly, her voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. "The Korthans will strike soon, and we need Aegis to work. We've come too far to be undone by one race's greed." Kazarek's reptilian eyes narrowed. "The Cinder will pay for their treachery. But first, we must ensure that Aegis is not beyond repair. We cannot allow their sabotage to be our downfall." Visara stepped forward, her feathers ruffling with agitation. "There is a way to counter the damage, if we can isolate the corrupted components. But we need time, and we need everyone focused. If we can't stop the Cinder's interference, we risk not only the weapon, but the survival of every species in this alliance." Then we'll buy you that time, Harlan said, determination setting in. I'll lead a mission to track down the Cinder agent. He's got to be hiding somewhere within the complex, and I'll find him. He won't get away with this. But the clock was ticking. As Harlan prepared to launch a covert operation to root out the Cinder agent, the Korthans began to mobilize in full force. They had detected the instability in Earth's defenses, and they were preparing to strike before the Alliance could become a true threat. At the same time, Zelenar continued his work in secret, oblivious to the tightening net around him. The Korthans were not just attacking the galaxy, they were adapting. And if humanity and its allies could not fix the weapon in time, the entire galaxy would face extinction. The galaxy had barely begun to unite before the Korthans arrived, their dark ships blotting out the stars as they neared the heart of the Alliance. They didn't wait for negotiations. They didn't wait for the weapon to be ready. The swarm was swift and relentless. The Alliance had no choice but to prepare for war. Commander Sarah Harlan stood at the edge of the command center, watching as the battle unfolded on the holographic display. The Korthan fleet, massive and indomitable, was closing in on Earth's outer defenses. The Eternal Vigilance and the other allied ships had positioned themselves around Earth's solar system, ready to launch a counterstrike. But something was wrong. The Korthans weren't simply attacking, they were adapting. Commander, the Korthans are using a new tactic, Lieutenant Park reported, his voice tense. They're jamming our communications and attacking the relay stations we set up. It's like they're anticipating our every move. Harlan clenched her fists, her jaw tight. They're evolving faster than we thought. The reality of the situation set in. The Alliance's weapon, Project Aegis, wasn't ready to be deployed, not in the way they needed. The Cinder sabotage had taken a heavy toll on the weapon systems, and the repairs were far from complete. The only thing standing between the galaxy and complete annihilation was the Alliance's resolve, and even that was beginning to fracture. Admiral Khazar-AK, we need to engage the Korthans now, Harlan said, turning to the reptilian admiral. We can't let them get any closer. Khazar-AK, standing by her side, studied the hologram with a keen eye. We have no choice. The fleet will engage immediately. But the Cinder must be dealt with, or this victory will be hollow. Harlan nodded. She had been preparing a covert team to track down the Cinder agent, Zelenar, but the situation had grown even more urgent. The battle couldn't wait. Lieutenant Park, initiate the counterattack, Harlan ordered, her voice unwavering. We'll buy the engineers time to finish the repairs on Aegis. And if the Cinder agent is still in the building, he'll be caught. As the battle raged outside, inside the command center, a different war was unfolding. Zelenar, the Cinder agent, had grown bolder in his sabotage. The corrosive agents he had injected into the power core had begun to destabilize the neural disruptor systems. Time was running out. The Korthans would arrive soon, and without the weapon, Earth and its allies stood little chance. Zelenar moved quickly through the lower levels of the command center, unaware that the net was tightening around him. His camouflage suit allowed him to blend seamlessly into the shadows, but he didn't anticipate the swift reaction of Harlan's covert team. The agents had tracked his movements, and now they had him cornered. Just as Zelenar entered a maintenance corridor, a group of elite human soldiers, led by Captain Eva Hall, blocked his path. Her team was equipped with the latest in human and alien tech, and they had been briefed on his identity. You're not going anywhere, Hall said, her voice low but firm, as she leveled her weapon at Zelenar. The Cinder agent froze, but he was not done yet. You don't understand, Zelenar said, his voice dripping with contempt. The Cinder will not allow you to win. The galaxy cannot afford a species as volatile as humanity to thrive. This war, it is only the beginning. With that, Zelenar activated a hidden device, a failsafe that would trigger a massive explosion in the heart of the command center. But before he could detonate it, Hall's team moved in. A brief firefight erupted, and Zelenar fell to the ground. His device was destroyed, but the damage had already been done. Project Aegis had suffered a critical hit. The power core was unstable. "Captain, get him to the brig," Hall ordered, her voice hard. "We need to contain him before he does any more damage." As the Cinder agent was taken away, Hall joined Harlan and Khazar-AK in the command center. The repair teams were working furiously, trying to stabilize Project Aegis, but the clock was ticking. "We've bought them some time, but we need that weapon online," Harlan said, her voice grim. Khazar-AK's eyes glinted with determination. "The fleet is ready to engage the swarm. We cannot let the Korthans breach our defenses. Earth's future depends on this fight." As the battle outside intensified, the Allied forces, human, Lirali, Meatrin, and Ultran, moved into position, their ships poised to strike. The Korthans, however, had anticipated the attack. Their fleet was vast and seemingly endless, a wave of destruction that threatened to overwhelm even the combined might of the galaxy's strongest races. Admiral Khazar-AK's flagship, the Eternal Vigilance, led the charge. His forces moved in perfect synchronization, striking with precision as their weapons unleashed devastating firepower. Yet, despite their best efforts, the Korthans fought back with terrifying ferocity. Every battle was a brutal exchange, with neither side willing to give an inch. Harlan's thoughts were with the engineers who were still working tirelessly to fix Project Aegis. If the weapon could not be repaired in time, the consequences would be dire. But deep in her gut, she knew one thing for certain: humanity would not go down without a fight. The battle outside Earth's orbit had escalated into chaos. The Korthan fleet, relentless and vast, had already breached the outer defenses, and their advance seemed unstoppable. The Alliance's ships, despite their combined might, were struggling to hold the line. Korthan drones swarmed across the battlefield, tearing through the Allied ships with ease, their overwhelming numbers and adaptive tactics threatening to tear apart everything the galaxy had fought for. Commander Sarah Harlan stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. The battle was a losing one, and the Korthans were only getting stronger with each passing moment. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Her hands gripped the edge of the console as she tried to make sense of the chaos unfolding before her. "We're losing this fight, Commander," Lieutenant Park reported, his voice tense. "The fleet can't hold off the swarm much longer." "We're not out of options yet," Harlan replied, her voice cold with determination. "We have to finish Aegis. We're the last hope for the galaxy." But time was running out. The repairs on Project Aegis had stalled. Despite the relentless efforts of the engineers, the neural disruptor's power core was still unstable. It would take hours, if not days, to stabilize it, and the Korthans weren't going to wait. Then came the devastating news. "The Korthans have launched a direct assault on the command center," Park said, his face pale. "They've breached the outer perimeter. We don't have much time before they reach us." Harlan's heart sank. Earth's last bastion was about to fall. "We fight to the end," she said with resolve. "Everyone, get to the defense stations. We're not letting them take this place." As the remaining forces scrambled to prepare for the assault, Admiral Khazar-AK's voice came over the comms. "Commander, we've been forced to retreat. The Korthan fleet has overwhelmed our outer defenses, and the Eternal Vigilance is on its last legs. We cannot hold them off much longer." Harlan's pulse quickened. The situation had gone from dire to catastrophic in a matter of hours. "You need to make a last-ditch effort," she ordered. "Use what's left of the fleet to draw the Korthans away from Earth. Buy us time." We'll do our best, Kazareke replied, his voice filled with grim determination. But you'll need to activate Aegis soon, or there will be nothing left to defend. The weight of their collective hopes was now on humanity's shoulders. Harlan's eyes turned back to the engineers working frantically to stabilize Aegis. If it failed, if the weapon couldn't be deployed in time, then the galaxy would fall. The Korthans would devour everything in their path, leaving nothing behind but the cold emptiness of space. Back on the front lines, the Korthan assault was gaining ground. Their forces surged toward the command center, their organic and mechanical soldiers clashing with the defenders. Captain Eva Hall and her squad led the charge, holding back the Korthans with everything they had. But it was clear that they were outnumbered, and each passing moment brought the inevitable closer. Keep them back! Hall shouted, her weapon blazing as Korthan drones rushed forward. We're not letting them get through. But the Korthans were relentless. They adapted faster than anyone had expected. The drones split into smaller, more agile units, flanking the defenders and forcing them into a retreat. Hall fought on, refusing to back down, but the oncoming wave of enemies was overwhelming. Meanwhile, inside the command center, the engineers were struggling against time. The core of Project Aegis hummed with unstable energy, and sparks flew from the machinery as the last of the repairs were made. We can't stabilize it much longer, Vasara, the Lirali engineer, said, her feathers flaring in frustration. It's too unstable. We need to power it up now, or the core will overload. Harlan's eyes widened. They had no choice. Do it. Now. Vasara didn't hesitate. With a final command, she activated the power core, sending a surge of energy through Aegis. The weapon came online with a deafening roar, and the holograms flickered to life, showing the Korthan fleet approaching. But as the weapon powered up, the ground trembled, and alarms blared. The Korthans had breached the command center's final line of defense. They were moments away from overrunning them. With no time left, Harlan ordered the final phase. Prepare to fire. The weapon's neural disruptor, designed to emit a concentrated pulse capable of shutting down Korthan technology, was ready. Its power fluctuated dangerously, but there was no turning back now. The pulse fired, a burst of light and energy that erupted from the heart of the command center. The results were immediate. Korthan drones within the blast radius faltered, their mechanical limbs twitching uncontrollably. The massive Korthan ships, advancing toward Earth, shuddered as their neural networks shut down. The tide of the battle shifted. The swarm faltered, its adaptive systems overwhelmed by the sheer force of the disruptor's energy. But it wasn't over yet. The Korthans, though temporarily halted, would adapt once more. And as Harlan watched the energy readings flicker dangerously, she knew they had only bought themselves a brief respite. This was humanity's last stand, one last chance to turn the tide before the Korthans adapted again. And this time, there would be no coming back. The blast from Project Aegis had sent shockwaves through the battlefield, disrupting the Korthan fleet and halting their advance for the moment. But it was only temporary. The Korthans were already adapting to the disruptor's frequency, recalibrating their systems and restoring their neural networks. Their sheer tenacity and rapid evolution made them a terrifying adversary, and Commander Sarah Harlan knew the clock was ticking. The holographic display in front of her showed Korthan ships reactivating, their forms shaking off the debilitating effects of Aegis. Even as the Allied forces cheered their brief victory, Harlan felt a deep unease in her gut. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. Commander, Lieutenant Park called from the communications station, his voice strained. The Korthans are regrouping. They've got reinforcements coming in from the outer rim. We'll be outnumbered in less than an hour. Then we need to take the fight to them, Harlan said, determination hardening her voice. We've got one shot at this. We hit them now, before they can adjust fully. Let's end this. Admiral Kazareke's voice echoed through the comms. The fleet is ready, Commander. We're at your disposal. But we will need a coordinated strike, focused and precise. If we fail, Earth will fall. Harlan stared at the map of the galaxy, the Korthan fleet looming like a storm cloud. Then we won't fail. She turned to her officers, her face a mask of resolve. It's time for the final counterstrike. The Alliance's fleet, though battered, was ready. The Eternal Vigilance and other ships lined up alongside humanity's own vessels, their weapons charged and their crews bracing for the ultimate confrontation. Every race, Lirali, Alteran, Maetrin, and human, had contributed their strength. And now, it would all come down to this. On the command bridge, Captain Eva Hall checked her weapon systems, her face grim. "We'll give them everything we've got," she said, her voice unwavering. "For Earth. For the galaxy." The engines roared to life, and the fleet surged forward, breaking the silence of space as it plunged into the heart of the Korthan forces. Meanwhile, within the command center, Project Aegis had begun to destabilize again. The neural disruptor was working, but the strain on its systems was immense. The pulse of energy needed to disable the Korthan fleets for good was nearly too much for the weapon to handle. Vesara, the Lirali engineer, worked furiously alongside the human scientists to keep the core stable. "We can't fire again until the core stabilizes," Vesara warned, sweat dripping from her brow. "It'll overload, destroy the entire command center." "We don't have the luxury of time," Harlan said. "We fire now, or everything we've worked for will be lost. We can't let them regroup." As the countdown to the final strike ticked away, Harlan's mind raced. She had never imagined this battle would be the end of everything. But here it was, the last stand of humanity, and the galaxy's last hope. The battle outside Earth's atmosphere had become a full-scale war. The Korthan forces, enraged and relentless, threw themselves at the Allied fleet, their ships twisting and turning with impossible agility as they unleashed barrages of energy that lit up the dark expanse of space. Yet the Alliance stood firm, holding their ground with everything they had. Despite the chaos, the Korthans' reinforcements were coming in waves, their adaptive tactics making each engagement more unpredictable than the last. The Allied fleet fought desperately to maintain their momentum, and yet the Korthans seemed to evolve with every strike. Their ships grew more resilient, their drones more efficient. Kazarake's voice rang out over the comms once again. "We've lost a third of the fleet, Commander. We need Aegis online now." Harlan turned to Park. "How long?" He checked his console, the numbers blinking rapidly. "The weapon is barely functional. We can try one more shot, but there's no guarantee it'll work." "Make it work," Harlan said, her voice a command. "We don't get another chance." With the last of the fleet holding the Korthan forces at bay, the engineers worked frantically to charge Aegis one final time. Vesara's hands shook as she worked on the final adjustments, pushing the weapon to its absolute limit. Every fiber of her being screamed that it was too dangerous, that they were risking everything on a gamble, but there was no other choice. "This is it," she said, stepping back from the console. "The neural disruptor is charged. We'll have one shot." Harlan nodded. "Prepare to fire." The sky above Earth turned red as the pulse from Project Aegis fired once again. The blast of energy ripped through the Korthan fleet, tearing apart ships, shutting down drones, and disabling entire swathes of the invaders' forces. The Korthans, now overwhelmed and unable to adapt in time, were decimated in one devastating strike. For a moment, silence fell over the battlefield. The Korthan forces faltered, their swarm broken by the sheer power of the weapon. The Alliance's fleet pressed on, cutting through the remnants of the Korthan forces. The tide had turned. But Harlan knew this victory wouldn't be permanent. The Korthans would evolve, adapt, and come again. But for now, humanity, and the galaxy, had survived. And in that fleeting moment of triumph, Harlan allowed herself to believe that they had a future, together. The silence after the final blast from Project Aegis was almost deafening. The Korthan fleet lay shattered, pieces of their massive ships drifting like debris through space. The once imposing swarm was now a disjointed, helpless collection of broken machinery and scattered remnants. For the first time in days, there was peace in the galaxy. But Commander Sarah Harlan knew better than to believe it would last. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The Korthans may have been dealt a crippling blow, but their adaptability was their greatest weapon, and it wouldn't take long for them to regroup, rethink, and evolve once again. The galaxy had won this battle, but the Korthans had proven they would stop at nothing to conquer. "Commander, the fleet is reporting significant losses," Lieutenant Park said, his face pale as he scanned the incoming data. "We've lost more than half of our ships, and the remaining forces are battered. It's going to take a long time to recover." "Tell them to hold steady," Harlan replied, her voice unwavering. "We've won the day, but we need to prepare for the future. The Korthans are not done with us yet. The war was only paused. The Korthans would undoubtedly adapt and return. But in the meantime, the Alliance had a fragile moment to rebuild. They had seen the power of humanity's resolve, the strength of their will to survive, and now, they had to use that to prepare for whatever came next." Back on Earth, life began to return to a semblance of normalcy. The skies, once filled with the dust of destruction, now stood clear. But that clarity was deceptive. The remnants of the Korthan fleet had been pushed back, but their retreat had left a trail of devastation in its wake. Earth's cities were scarred, and the world's leaders knew the recovery would be long and hard. In the underground command center, the damage to Project Aegis had been repaired. Yet, the weapon still felt unstable. Despite the victory, Harlan's thoughts returned to one inescapable fact: the Korthans would be back. They always came back. And when they did, humanity would have to be ready. "I don't trust the silence," Harlan muttered to herself as she stood at the holographic map, watching the glowing dots of the remaining fleet. Not yet. Admiral Khazar-AK was one of the few in the Alliance who fully understood the consequences of the Korthans' defeat. For them, retreat wasn't a signal of defeat, it was a strategic pause. Khazar-AK had seen it in battle before: the Korthans would retreat, regroup, adapt, and come back with an even more terrifying vengeance. "They will come back stronger," Khazar-AK warned Harlan as he stood beside her. "We have won victory, but it was not enough to break them. We need to prepare for their next move. We must fortify every possible stronghold, every planet. We must be ready to strike before they strike us again." Harlan nodded, her expression hard. "Then we start preparing now." The galaxy's leaders convened once more, this time in person, for the first time since the war began. In the shattered halls of Earth's new Alliance headquarters, the representatives from every race, human, Lirali, Alteran, and Maetran, came together in a fragile moment of unity. They had fought together. They had suffered losses together. But the enemy still loomed on the horizon. "We have won this battle, but we cannot rest," said Harlan, her voice resolute as she addressed the council. "The Korthans are relentless. Their ability to adapt and evolve will only grow stronger. We must build a new, united defense, with humanity at the helm of it all." The other leaders were silent, but they listened. The brutal truth of the war was undeniable. No race, no species, could survive alone against the Korthans. It was time for something new, an alliance that wasn't just about shared resources but about shared resolve. "Humanity has proven itself to be resilient," said Admiral Khazar-AK, his reptilian eyes glowing with a mix of respect and fear. "You have turned the tide once, and I believe you can do it again. But this time, we must be ready before they strike." The room was filled with murmurs of agreement. There was no more talk of retreat or negotiation. Now, it was about unity and retaliation. Humanity had shown that it could rise from the ashes, but this time, they wouldn't be caught off guard. The next phase of the war would be one of strategy, strength, and preparation. There would be no more waiting for the Korthans to strike first. But as the leaders discussed their next move, something in the galaxy was shifting. Unbeknownst to the Alliance, the Korthans had already begun their regeneration. Their dark ships were not just fleeing, they were being rebuilt. A new wave of innovation, a new generation of Korthan soldiers, was being forged in the shadows. And the galaxy's fragile peace was about to be shattered once more. In the deep recesses of a Korthan shipyard hidden in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, a single, dark figure stepped into the command center of an ancient warship. His voice was low but commanding, tinged with malice. "Prepare the fleet. It's time for the reckoning." The Korthans were returning. The galaxy had been given a brief respite. Earth, scarred but unbroken, had become a symbol of humanity's resilience. The remnants of the Korthan fleet were being studied, their technology dissected, and their weaknesses catalogued. Every race within the Alliance was working tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable next phase of the war. The Korthans would return. It wasn't a question of if, but when. And yet, Commander Sarah Harlan felt uneasy. The silence that followed the defeat of the Korthan fleet was deafening. It was too quiet, too calm. In her heart, she knew that this was the calm before the storm. The War Council met again, this time on the newly constructed command station in orbit around Earth. The Alliance was stronger now, united in purpose and resolve. New technologies, hastily developed in the wake of the battle, were integrated into the defense systems. New fleets were being formed. But there was a constant sense of dread hanging in the air. "The Korthans are rebuilding," Admiral Kazareke said, his voice grim as he studied the latest intelligence. "We've caught glimpses of their ships, but they're cloaked in shadow. They're adapting to our strategies faster than we can predict. It's only a matter of time before they strike again." Harlan stood at the head of the council, her mind racing. The battle had been won, but there was still so much to prepare for. The Korthans were coming, and this time, they wouldn't make the same mistakes. "We've fought one battle. But we need to make this the battle," she said, her voice commanding the attention of the room. "We need to strike first. If we wait, we risk everything. We take the fight to them, before they can evolve again." "Agreed," Kazareke responded. "The Korthans are notorious for their ability to adapt. But we can't wait for them to surprise us again. We must hit them hard and fast." But Harlan's mind kept returning to the thought that gnawed at her: what if we don't have enough time? As preparations for the counterstrike continued, a strange signal was detected deep within Korthan space. It wasn't the usual pattern, this was something new. Something different. Harlan stared at the data. The signal was not an attack. It was a message. A communication. And it was coming from deep within the heart of the Korthan war machine. "We've intercepted a transmission," Park said, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's a message from the Korthans, Commander." The council fell silent as the transmission was decoded and played for all to hear. A deep, resonant voice filled the room. It was calm, calculating, and filled with cold resolve. "You have won a battle. But you have not won the war. The Korthans are eternal. You will never defeat us. We are the ultimate evolution. You cannot stop what is coming. Prepare for your extinction." The message ended abruptly, leaving a palpable sense of dread hanging in the air. "The Korthans are more than just a species," Harlan whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "They're a force of nature. We've been fighting more than just an army, we've been fighting evolution itself." The Korthans had revealed themselves, not just as invaders, but as a living embodiment of relentless adaptation. Their threat was not limited to their ships or their armies, it was embedded in their very biology. Their capacity to learn, to evolve, to overcome every obstacle placed before them made them the ultimate predator. And as Harlan's fleet prepared for what might be their final counterattack, there was one undeniable truth: the galaxy had pushed the Korthans to the brink, but they had never truly beaten them. The Korthans had simply been forced to regroup. The Alliance would need to strike hard, before it was too late. As the fleets gathered in the heart of the galaxy, poised for the ultimate battle, something unexpected happened. A small group of Korthan ships emerged from the depths of their shipyards, smaller than usual, but packed with more firepower than ever before. They were the first wave of a new generation of Korthan soldiers, their biology enhanced and their technology fused into something even more dangerous. "Commander!" Park shouted. "The Korthans are launching a new offensive. This is it, their final strike." Harlan stood in front of the strategic map, her eyes locked onto the Korthan fleet that was growing larger by the second. There was no more time for hesitation. There would be no second chances. "We fight," she said, her voice resolute. "For Earth. For the galaxy. For everything we've built." The final battle took place in the void of space, as the Korthan and allied fleets collided in an epic clash of forces. Explosions lit the dark sky as ships exchanged fire, the vastness of the galaxy serving as the backdrop to a war unlike any the universe had ever seen. The Korthans, evolving once more, were a more formidable force than ever before. They adapted to every attack, countering with terrifying efficiency. But humanity had learned too. The Alliance's unity, its tactics, its resilience, these were weapons that no Korthan could counter. In the midst of the battle, Commander Harlan stood at the heart of the command center, overseeing the final assault. The galaxy was watching, waiting for the outcome of this last, desperate fight. And then, it came. The Korthan ships, battered and broken, began to retreat. The pulse of humanity's resistance had proven too much for even the relentless Korthans to overcome. The final dawn had arrived. The Korthans had been defeated, this time. And the galaxy had survived. But as the remnants of the Korthan fleet fled into the farthest reaches of space, Harlan knew one thing for certain: the fight was never truly over. For as long as the Korthans lived, they would always return. And humanity would always be ready.